Good day, guys. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome
as
back.
As you can see, our main man aren't here today. He's a little sick, under the weather. He's got man flu.
He's let us loose.
Yeah, he's let us loose. Who knows what's going to happen today?
No.
But thankfully, to steer the show, we've got the lovely Claire in to join us.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be nice to start it off just to hear a little bit about yourself and how you got into our industry.
Sure. Well, I guess it's quite a normal story into hospitality. I was a student. I needed some money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started working actually with Matt, and I was the world's worst bartender for about 3 weeks.
I've done lessons there. I've worked with Matt.
Yeah. Yeah, I was absolutely dreadful. And then I went to work at a cinema. And then I just had extended gap years for about a decade. And I realised that I kind of needed a job that worked around my alcoholism. So obviously hospitality was quite useful for that. And then I just never left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been working in the industry for years now, like well over a decade.
It's a solid trap, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think, I can leave this, and no matter what, or however long you try to escape for, you always get pulled back in.
Yeah, it's got a gravitational pull, hasn't it?
It's just got a way of life that we're all so accustomed to that it's easy for us now.
Yeah. That is one thing that I can't imagine myself doing anything else because I just know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I guess.
it's easy. You almost get in a flow, don't you?
Yeah.
You move through it.
Absolutely.
So this episode's kind of following on from the last one that we did, kind of getting into a bit more depth of what, because we kind of did like a blanket kind of overview of everything that's.
Yeah, last week we
can
kind
be
of
bad
rambled
with the
on
job.
about our kind of experiences.
Yeah.
And never got kind of into the actual nitty gritty of certain things. And we've been led to believe that you've got a little bit of experience on the slightly darker side of what we spoke about.
Yeah, I have plenty of experience as a fully functioning alcoholic, yes. So I guess I would be perhaps, well, I don't know how you'd look at it, a good example or a bad example of vices in hospitality.
I think you're a great example nowadays
thank
because
you.
you're clean and you're
Clean and
functioning.
serene.
Yeah, you're working in our hospitality again, right? So
Yeah, it's an actual miracle. I didn't really think it would be possible, but here we are.
perfect.
That is quite a thing as well, like to be able to kind of put yourself back into the position that a lot of people
would struggle with. Or
would struggle
try and get
with.
back on top, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it's not something that everybody could do. For me, it was a series of conditions working out in my favour and a lot of coincidences. So one thing that was beneficial to me is that I came out of treatment during lockdown. So I got like a staggered return to work to start with. It wasn't that I just got thrown back into a Saturday night in the weeds.
Yeah.
I had like time to pace myself. And also obviously the industry changed a lot over the pandemic. So I was able to negotiate a much better set of hours, and my work were actually incredible for that. They were really understanding, and they thought, I've been there for a long time, and they thought we're just going to try and do what she's asking because we'll get a better worker out of her if she's able to do things her way. So that was really handy actually. I managed to negotiate a better set of conditions than perhaps your average hospitality worker due to longevity of service.
Yeah, well, I think because, as we did say, like it's quite easy to get back into this kind of job, or once you've done it for a few times, you get into like this weird state where you think where you do things just automatically, where other people completely look past, and we think it's common sense, but it's actually just pure experience. It's like we expect some of the new guys to come in and be able to do all of these things that we do every day, so easily. So I wondered, coming out of that kind of duration of not being in hospitality and back into it. I know you said you kind of staggered back in, but was that quite doing those kind of normal things? Did they just return, or?
It wasn't what I expected at all, actually. I think it was hard for all of us during the pandemic, anyone who wasn't a key worker, to go from suddenly resting for a long time after working themselves crazy for however many years. That in itself was so strange for everyone, I think. But one thing I found quite weird is I thought I'd really struggle to work around alcohol, but luckily I never drank at work.
Yeah,
thank God. So,
Not like us, then.
Weirdly, I just knew that the alcohol didn't belong to me and wasn't mine to take. And strangely enough, I've actually trained on the bar now. And so I do a lot of bar work, and I never did before. I was only ever a waitress. And I think in my brain, I just know that it's making potions for other people. I've not made that connection. This is something that I can take.
Yeah.
But it did take a little bit of time to get used to. But yeah, it was quite lucky that I had so much support. But obviously, the nature of what's happened since like Brexit, the pandemic, cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
The staffing is different now in a lot of the industry. So there was a lot more expectation that, you know, if I've got the cushy AM shifts, I should be doing a little bit more. And that's fine. Like, it's actually worked in my favour, but I had to really stay aware of my boundaries. And luckily, I was in a place where that was accommodated nicely.
Yeah, and respected as well, which is always nice to have that kind of level of support and camaraderie. And
it's so important
as well, as opposed to you just, you know, as back in the day, you probably worked yourself into the grounds, where now you've got a bit more of a...
Absolutely this. And this is the thing, isn't it? Is that if you don't sort of check in with yourself regularly and stay aware of where you're at, it's quite easy that you bend over so far backwards for people that you end up snapping your back.
Yeah.
And then you're the one who has to go off on stress leave, or you're the one that's told you're not competent anymore. And it's actually that you've overdone it a little bit. And I think it's really important sometimes to put your foot down and say, no, I need my needs to be met. And it's a hard thing to ask for in this industry, because I think it's seen as a sign of weakness, when actually it really shouldn't be. It's actually a sign of courage to ask for your needs to be met.
Definitely. I think it's been only in the last couple of years, when we actually on this side of the whole lockdown and everything, that we've all kind of, especially working with Matt, that we've all kind of sat back and gone, actually, we actually can have a working life. You know,
100%.
so it's quite nice to hear you talk about that as well. So I guess it's kind of being adapted everywhere these days, opposed to just in our, because we have like a little family unit where we are. So I feel quite like it's our little bubble, and that we're looking after each other there.
We're all tight. We're all quite close with each other. If somebody's got an issue, I at least feel like, you know, if they don't want to speak to like somebody who's like management, you know, they could speak to me. Like, I'm fairly easygoing. Everybody's easygoing. That like they're all understanding at the same time. So like if there was an issue, you know, I think we've managed to create a culture where people would be okay to talk about something. Yeah, and some people are, and some people are quite open about things. I mean, I'm quite open about my mental health, and if I'm having a really shit day, I'll tell everybody I'm having a really shit day. Like, I won't keep quiet about it, but I think it is, especially, and it's not going to be the same everywhere, obviously, but I think in our case, we do have a good group, and then everybody kind of involved with that, we all help each other.
So do you feel like that's something that you're getting now, or if you have had?
I think it's crucial to survive the industry, to be honest, because like you've just said, in a situation where you really feel like people are looking out for you, it makes it a little bit more survivable and a little bit less isolating. Like, one thing I was thinking about after listening to the previous podcast is, like, we really are on the outskirts of society. Like, we miss out on key events all the time. We miss out on seeing family, friends. Relationships suffer because of the nature of the hours. And even if you're in the industry with somebody, like if somebody's in hospitality and you're going out with them, say, I've not worded that very well, but
we all know what you mean.
If you're in a relationship with someone in hospitality, it's sometimes even harder to see them than if they're doing like a 9 to 5. And you can just feel like a real outsider. And I think this is really why it's quite forgivable that the drinking culture is what it is in the industry, because the only time that you feel connected to people is when you finished your shift and you're drinking with people. Like, it's totally understandable that is like a byproduct of the industry. And I don't know, my personal experience is that since the pandemic, there does seem to have been quite a shift where you can kind of be a bit more honest about your mental health and about asking for, like, when you need something, like if you need an extra day of rest, or if you're struggling. From my experience, again, I don't know if this is across the board, but there's a bit more communication about it, and it's almost a little bit more acceptable to say, look, I'm struggling, this is what I need.
I think that's a really good stem from what happened with the whole lockdown, because we were all so isolated that a lot of us did actually sit down and talk to people, obviously have a video call, but a lot of us were actually sitting down talking, and it wasn't just us, you know, in the actual worker days of the pubs. It was our bigwigs and things as well. They were all isolated in their own little bubbles too, and they actually, I feel like they felt more connected with the day-to-day things that we kind of have to struggle with and go through. And that's created this whole community of people who don't work in our industry struggle, people who work above us struggled, and us, you know, where we are struggling as well.
Absolutely.
We've all opened that door to talk.
Yeah, I think it really normalised an isolation that we're all sort of used to. So there is some good that came out of something crazy, isn't it?
And it was a crazy time. I think you said something there that I would quite like to touch on, and it's the relationships in our industry. And what's your kind of like view and experiences in that kind of field?
Well, I'd say for me personally, my alcoholism and like all the problems I had with drinking were a byproduct of the industry. Like I will take some accountability and say some of it is the nature of my personality and how I dealt with things. So that really caused a lot of pain for the people close to me. But also, obviously, when my key interest was getting wasted, I was an enabler, and I would encourage everybody to get on the same wavelength as me, which included like, you know, going out every single night after work and getting wasted. So I probably did a lot of damage to people as well. But in that as well, I've always said the friends that you've been in the weeds with, they're a different level of friends, aren't they? Like there's so much trauma bonding. When you've been in the weeds with somebody and then you've gone and drank with them after a shift, it's a different level of friendship. And even now, all the friends that I have who've left the industry, when we meet up now and don't drink, like we go for a coffee or whatever, you know, what normal people do.
Stuff.
There's still that bond there that, you know, we've survived some of our darkest days as a group, and you just have to sort of just pull each other through, don't you? So I think that is really crucial. But again, it can be quite toxic and it can be quite isolating. But it's nice when you do really find a group of people who look out for you, and, you know, it just makes it a little bit less lonely, doesn't it?
That family fight by fire kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, these are I know it's like a work-based thing, like, you know, as we all do as we grow up or move on to different things, we do lose those kind of friendships. But they really are, in that moment of time, that they are the ones who always seem to turn up for you.
Yeah,
and help
absolutely.
You through the darker times.
Yeah, some of my closest friends are ex-industry.
Yeah. So me and Matt, even when we first started working together, I moved on to a different pub. Matt got his first pub. And even through those times where we weren't working physically together, we still spoke most days. You know, it's one of those ones you create these like weird gels that you just can't seem to ever put behind you, you know?
Yeah, there's an unwritten understanding, isn't there, in things like clopin or AFD or in the weeds, or like, oh, we're 80 open. People just understand what it means. You don't have to elaborate that. I've really been there. I experienced that. It's hard.
Getting stuck in there, like when you open the door and you've only got two of you on, but all of a sudden, less have got some random show around the corner. You're like, wait a minute.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what about yourself, Sammy?
In terms of like relationships and stuff, I feel like, especially if the other person's in the industry as well, that it can impact it quite a lot. Like if you're both doing like long shifts, or if you're both doing AFDs or whatever, then you come back 2 a.m, like opposite sides of the city, you come back and you're just like, I can't be arsed.
Oh, absolutely not.
You roll into bed and that's it. Like there's nothing. And then as you wake up in the morning, they have to go off, you have to go off, and it's the same thing over and over again. It breaks it down slowly but surely, and it, you know, like your mental health suffers from that as well, like a lot. Yeah. And like even just being in a relationship, like.
Yeah, relationships are a lot of work as well. Like,
yeah.
But yeah.
I think that there's an added stress onto that when you're both in kind of situation where you're working longer hours. So it's not just essential to. My head's gone.
That's fine.
It's not essential to just hospitality, but you know, to like other things as well. Like if you're working in like factories and stuff like that.
Factories, NHS, nurses, anyone,
key workers, stuff like that as well. Like it's the same thing.
And then they don't see their.
It has a real impact on relationships as well. And like for me personally, like I don't see my family that often because obviously they're, you know, half a country away. So, and the issue is because. The longer hours I take and the more I do, I've got less time to talk to them because my parents, obviously my mum does a 9 to 5 basically, and my dad does factory work, so he's up a bit earlier in the morning. Sometimes I actually do end up catching him when he's up to get ready for work, to get into work when I've finished work, and it's like a half an hour like in between when we're both kind of up at the same time. But like I rarely catch my mum because she's up when I'm asleep. Yeah. Then I'm at work, and then he's at work, and then he'll go back, and then. So in terms of like family stuff, for me it's difficult because I'm living away, and it's, you know, be easier if you're by your family. So you don't have the time to visit them, but I can't exactly just go up for the weekend. Like
that's a bit.
It takes half a day to get there. It takes half a day to get back. So and it's expensive because of the trains and everything as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, but yeah, I do think it is definitely an added stress to relationships when hospitality is such a high stress environment itself.
And it's quite high demanding as well.
Yeah.
It takes you well out of your element sometimes.
Yeah.
And into
Yeah.
weird zones that you never thought you would even be in, let alone
Aye.
try and deal with.
I think as well, you know, you mentioned other precarious industries. They've got like a better status in society sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like everybody respects NHS workers.
Well.
But there's a stigma around hospitality, I find, where people think that, oh, well, it's just pulling pints, it's just burgers and fries. And then it's almost like
But you're stood still behind the bar
Yeah.
for
Twiddling your
God
thumbs,
knows how long.
apparently.
Like, and you're up on your feet. You're
Yeah.
not just sat down in an office chair. You're stood there. It's exactly the same as if you were working in a factory on the line. You're
Yeah.
stood in the same place doing the same motion. Instead of doing that, you're doing that instead. There's,
Yeah.
you know,
Or is it,
you can pull a lot of comparisons from other places in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll clear 10 miles in a busy shift. And I think people often think that our need for rest is invalid. Like, there's been so many occasions in my life where I've told someone, and I know you touched on this in one of the other episodes, about like, you'll be asleep at 2:00 in the afternoon. And
Yeah.
everybody's like, why are you
What are
so
you doing?
lazy? Like, well, I didn't go to sleep until 5 because, you know, normal people in normal jobs start winding down at 5:10, you know, like, like I think there was mention in one of the episodes about, oh, someone sits in traffic for an hour and then they sit down and have the dinner. And like, my life is kind of like that now, which is lucky. But I always say to people, sometimes in work, they'll say, oh, don't judge me, but, you know, I stayed up really late last night. I'm the opposite of somebody who will judge you for that. Like, you're preaching to the choir. Like, if you finished work at 1 or 2 in the morning, you are not going to wind down the second you get in from work, especially if you've pumped yourself full of energy drink and then gone for a few pints. Like, of course, people are going to be awake till 5, 6 in the morning,
Especially-
just decompressing.
Yeah, you get in that social bubble talking away as well, so your brain's still racing.
Yeah.
And you're recalling things that's happened in the shift,
Or you've not eaten for the entire shift, so you finally get back.
Yeah.
If you've got something in the fridge, you'll make it, you'll eat it, and then because you've ate, you're awake or something like that. Is like, even like staying up, like all the caffeine and stuff like that as well. Like, at the moment, I'm like going to bed like 5 a.m. Something like that. I woke up early today though. For me, I got up at 11:30.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
That's very true.
I got up early. It's usually about 4 p.m.
Message in the group at that time.
I usually, like, if my shift starts at 5 at the moment, I'll wake up at like 4.
Yeah.
4:30.
And why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I used to be exactly the same when I was on predominantly closed shift.
Yeah.
I'd think I was getting up early if I was up at 3 in the afternoon. About, what am I going to do with all this 45 minutes of time? I'll go and look at the trees and listen to the birds.
Yeah, I think
Have a nice stroll to work. Yeah.
I think I've done like two day shifts in the past 6 months or something like that.
It's not surprising.
No, but like I guess it's a bit different for me because I'm a uni student.
Yeah.
Even though I'm
Not,
not really doing uni at the moment.
Yeah.
But
But you might choose to, Sam. It's okay. So you mentioned that you're got a little bit better of the times, the hours and things.
Yeah.
So would you say that has shifted, like your work-life balance has moved more in your favour?
Yeah, it was essential. I needed to have like a set routine because it was all over the place before. And that's one of the things that I had to really unlearn, is how to not go for a beer after every single shift. I had to fill the time with something else. And this is quite a weird thing actually, but when I was sort of early into recovery, I used to have a bath every night because it took ages to run the bath. I'd get all the potions out. I'd be fiddling around in the bath, lighting all the candles, making it all nice and ambient. I'd pick some music, get a bit of Enya on. And that whole process took like an hour. And then by the time I'd sort of like had a bath and then got into bed, it was like I'd taken up the whole evening. And obviously I replaced all the nights out with recovery meetings as well. But it took me a while to get used to that because a bath didn't feel like a fair reward. And I know you've mentioned before that the sort of reward strategy, like I'm very big on that. Like I need a trophy for waking up and surviving the day. And like, some hot water, that's not the same as going out and drinking like 7 bottles of wine.
All that fizzes around and makes it colourful.
Yeah, it wasn't enough. And people would say, why don't you just have a nice herbal tea? Well, that's not going to fix the day,
What's a herbal tea going to do for me?
Exactly. Like, it's not bad for me, so I'm not going to enjoy it. So
it's like when you got a cold and someone's like, "Oh, have some ginger and honey." It's like, I don't really want a ginger and honey. I will quite happily have a whiskey, but yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's pulling back to the whole thing we were on about last time, was about like the dopamine response and like our need to kind of reach for that because of what we've had to go through for the entire day. We want something to reward ourselves with, and you know, a lot of things that most people would usually reward themselves with won't cut it.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult to unlearn that, especially if you've been around for years. Like if it's all you've ever known is working like AFDs, Clope and the rest of it, to suddenly go, okay, the one thing that keeps you going, you're not allowed it anymore. Well, that's hard. And you know, from personal experience, that it was really difficult for, I'd say, about a year for me to get used to that.
Yeah.
But now it's just
It's every day.
just, it's just normal.
Have you replaced that with like a new, like, you know, your end of night reward or your shift ending kind of thing, or have you just kind of moved away from that and completely unlearned it?
I just have to have a very set routine at night. Like I'll watch a special program before bed, and it has to be mild peril. It can't be anything above mild peril. Like anything slightly traumatic's off. So you know, something like Gogglebox, something where there's like
easy watching, a little bit of trash TV.
Nothing's going to hurt you on Gogglebox, is it? But yeah, I have to and I have to stop drinking caffeine at a certain time now, like a true old person.
Like an actual adult, yeah.
Oh, I can't have a tea. It's past 8 o'clock. It's so strange when I used to start a night out at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And now I'm worrying about having a tea at, you know, too close to bedtime.
Yeah.
Which is before midnight.
We literally had this conversation on the way here. Like me and Matt were arguing that like I find it weird if anybody has a coffee or anything after 2 p.m. Because like by then, like majority of the day is technically gone. You're going to be done in like a few hours. And he was like, no, 7 p.m. is when you can have your last coffee. And I'm like,
I mean, I've lived with
normal
that,
person. If you have a coffee at 7 p.m., you're bouncing off the walls. Like
yeah. Well, Matt's not a normal person. He consumes a lot of caffeine.
He's
and then I'm
unit.
even further the wrong way because caffeine actually makes me really sleepy.
Oh gosh.
I'll have a double espresso and I'll be ready for going to bed. You know,
wish.
it doesn't really work, but that's just the way my brain is.
That's fascinating. I've had to stop myself chinning a Red Bull at like 9 p.m. before. No, I've only got an hour left. Like maybe I should settle down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I always say the best thing to do. I know again this is quite hard if you're working a close, but I find that going to the cinema is quite useful. If you need some escapism that's not a substance,
because especially nowadays, movies are like 2 and a bit hours long.
Yeah.
Like, when did that happen?
I'm actually going to go watch Dune 2 after this.
And it's strange, like we both have a background in cinema work, so why would we go to work to chill out?
To relax, go and remember the smell of popcorn.
That's the same thing as like, that's the same thing as like going to a pub or going to the pub or wherever you work after you finish and having a drink anyway.
Yeah.
So like it's the same anywhere you would work realistically if it's anything to do with hospitality or anything.
And I think there's a sort of idea with people who aren't in recovery that your goal is to go into a pub and have a lemonade.
Yeah.
Well, why would I want to go into the environment that's made me sick and watch everybody else having a good time and then have something that isn't fun?
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, pubs are out all the time. I can just about manage an afternoon pint of Coke in a pub, but I would not step foot in any sort of drinking establishment.
No.
It's a sensory overload as well. I don't know if I'm just getting old, but I just find it too noisy. And I stress for the workers as well.
I tell you what, I think it's really weird. I've only ever experienced it when I've gone out with my dad's, the missus and little one, but if I'm in a pub, I don't really switch off because even though I don't work there, I'm looking around as if you know something's going to be on fire and it's going to be my job to go put it out. And I know Matt feels that way.
Or like those guys are acting dodgy over there. I'm pretty sure they're on whiff or something. And you're like constantly looking at them like, are they going to start
waiting for them to do something?
Yeah, exactly. So I can kick them out, and it's not even your pub or whatever.
Yeah. So
I'll be honest as well. I think a lot of my family and friends don't really want to go with me to a place like that because I'll be doing exactly that, watching what the staff are doing. But I also try to unionise all the staff, and it's really embarrassing for everybody that I'm with because I'm like, how are your conditions? Are you getting your contracted hours? And they'll be like, come on, we just need to go. We're just out for a nice meal. Stop trying to start the revolution.
stop working, chill out.
It's a Sunday afternoon. But yeah.
So this union thing that you're about, give us a lowdown on it, because I'm not really sure what unions are, to be quite honest. I'm a young boy, so I don't really understand what.
I understand unions. I just
is.
didn't realise that we had unions in our trade, and I've been in it forever.
This June will be the 1 year anniversary of the East Midlands Hospitality Branch being set up by myself and a few others who are amazing. But I think this is the thing, is that it's not really, sort of historically, it's not been for our industry, has it? There's no one's really known how to
coal miners
organise.
And stuff like that as well historically, and
it's often deemed unorganisable, which isn't true, because one quick Google, you'll see who's been on strike, and it's really impressive. Like Starbucks in America have got over 400 unionised stores now.
Really?
They've worked really hard for it, and they're doing amazing. It's super inspirational to look at. But I think people think that it isn't for them. And I think there is a real culture in hospitality of sort of trying to be the most exploited person. Like, I know you'll know what I mean, where someone will say that they've worked a 14-hour day and somebody else has done a 15-hour day. Somebody else has done a 25-hour day with -1 break. Yeah. And it's... I think there's just this sort of culture of, oh, we don't need help, we're fine, it's okay. And I know for me personally, before I understood what a trade union was, I thought, oh, it's my fault for having a shit job, really. I should have tried harder. This is what I'm left with. And I didn't really realise that actually we're all entitled to be protected. We're all entitled to rights. We deserve the same things that other people do. But it's not really a widespread phenomenon in hospitality, which is something I'm trying to change, because I just really want people to realise that they can ask for basic things.
Yeah. So I'm assuming, because I genuinely don't know what unions are, so I'm assuming it is basically an organisation set up to kind of provide people with support in terms of trying to get a fair wage, fair working hours and fair not working hours, that kind of thing, and like the mental health support and stuff like that as well.
Absolutely.
Is that kind of what the basis is of it?
Arguably, the unions would say that the members run the unions as well. So it becomes what you make of it. So what you put into it, you'll get out.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll say from my personal experience, I didn't really know what one was either. And then I was made aware of a union a while ago, and I suddenly realised that we could get like employment advice, but exactly that, you can negotiate for fair wages. You can get help in disciplinaries. Everybody's seen a disciplinary letter where it says you're entitled to a union rep, and they go, well, I'm not in a union, I don't know what a rep is.
I can't lie, I've got a stellar record everywhere I've been, so...
No, he's never seen
No, I've never seen a disciplinary letter.
You can change that if you want.
I sadly cannot say the same.
You'll be looking for a new TL.
Okay. We've got a few applicants.
Oh, right. Oh, have you? Not as good as me. Tell you that now.
Aye. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's fine. I think the problem that I often find as well is that, if your house was burning down, you wouldn't then go run into somebody and say, oh, I need to get some home insurance. Yeah. What often happens is that people are aware of what I do outside of my working hours, and then when they get into trouble at work, they'll come up to me like, how can the union help me? And I say, well, are you a member of a union? And they say, no. Do I need to be? Yes, you do. It's a good way of sort of protecting yourself to just have that. And a lot of people get put off by, well, I don't want to spend that much money. But then I say, well, for the price of like 2 coffees a month, you can protect yourself against anything that goes wrong in the workplace. And actually for me, I remember a therapist saying to me once that the union would probably save my life, because I'm sure this isn't something that's unusual in hospitality. A lot of people feel quite worthless. There's often this like crushing feeling that you're not really making any difference in the world, and that people are looking down on the job that you're doing. Yeah. And since I sort of started trying to demand better rights for hospitality, I thought, you know what, I can make a difference as a waitress. Like, I can change the world a little tiny bit at a time, and I can ask for better. And I never did that before. I just didn't really understand what my rights were. I didn't have the sort of courage to fight back to certain things. And now it's different. It's just nice to have that protection. And that's one thing that I would really say about the industry, is that we really need to protect ourselves in any way we can, whether it's mental health or just protecting the hours that we're getting at work, or just general health. But even just protecting our rights, like if you get hauled into a disciplinary over something, it's really nice to have that extra protection where you go, do you know what, somebody's got my back. Because it can just happen, can't it? You think, oh, I'm invincible, I'm not going to get into trouble here, and then something goes wrong. It's just so easy. Yeah, it's one head office complaint away from absolute chaos. So it's always nice to be protected.
I like the way you touched on that with the rights and things, because I, for the longest part, assumed that we had our contracts and that was it. That is your rights, essentially. You've signed the bit of paper. Your right is now just to devote your whole entire life to this bodybuilding and work as many hours as you possibly can to get a small paycheck. Yeah. Is it, for me, I've never looked into it, so I wouldn't know. Is it particularly hard to get into a union, or is it as easy as just going on Google and just finding something around, or?
Yeah, you can just join really easily. It's handy to know that if you're in hospitality and you're on a precarious contract, that you can get a discounted membership rate as well. Like, you don't have to pay the same as somebody who's perhaps like got a salary at Rolls-Royce. Like, you can apply for a precarious contract.
Is it actually called a precarious contract?
It's not, but
it should be.
yeah, it should be. Yeah, and I think that's important to take into account. A lot of us are on like 0-hour contracts or 5-hour contracts and whatnot, and that's something that's quite scary, isn't it? Is that you often go into jobs and you're promised, oh, it's just a contract thing, like it just says 5 hours, but you'll get more. Yeah. And then when push comes to shove and you're slashing labour to within an inch of its life, everyone is actually on those 5 hours, and suddenly people can't pay their rent, people can't buy food while they're at uni, people can't buy their kids' school dinners. And that's when you need a union to come in and be like, hang on a second.
I personally think 0-hour contracts shouldn't be allowed. I think it's criminal.
I think it should be opted in, personally. I think that if you want one, then you should ask for one.
But it's the same how you can opt out of the mandatory working week, how you can go higher than that.
Yeah.
Sign that bit of paper to say that it should be the same, where like you can sign to say, oh, if you don't have the hours, I'm happy to take none. Because like, especially nowadays, like the cost of living and everything now, like nobody's going to be able to make ends meet with 2 hours of work, if that. I think it's ridiculous, personally. Because I have been on them before, and I have been absolutely shafted by people that have given me these contracts.
And these promises of.
Exactly. It's we'll get you in full time, but we'll put you on this 0 hours contract because it's easier for us and easier for probation. And then 2 weeks later, after having like 2 weeks of some shifts that are not the promised hours, you get fuck all. And you're expected to live with that. Yeah,
and then as soon as you start looking for other jobs or leave, then they get back up and they're like, there's no loyalty here.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought we were a family.
Yes.
Yeah. I think as well, you notice that when there's something big going on, like when Eurovision was in Liverpool this year, there was a huge thing of people mass hiring, giving everybody 50 hours a week for the 2 weeks that it was happening, and then straight after, suddenly the contract's being wafted in the face, and they're only entitled to checks notes 0. So it's just really important. I think, there's just a real culture in hospitality of people not realising that they can actually ask for better. And I think that the higher ups really prey on that. Like they know that we're easy to exploit. And it only takes a couple of people to sort of stand up and say, no, I think actually I deserve to be able to eat during a cost of living crisis for things to shift. But that in itself, I know, with jobs being as precarious as they are, it's often quite hard to be the person who stands up and says no. And I think one thing that I've really noticed since, all the things that have decimated the industry, like the pandemic, Cosy Lives, Brexit, the culture shift seems to be now that managers and staff are sort of in it together, and it's more like we're all a team together and we're against head office. Whereas before there was a lot more pressure, I think, where maybe in some places managers were sort of used as puppets by head office, but now the managers are in the same position as us, and they're saying, well, no, like we're trying to survive a cost of living crisis too, and we've got your back. And managers are just as much, if not more, exploited than actually the team members who are on the.
I think I felt similar to that that way before, but like before I worked at the craft beer bit that I worked at before working with you guys, kind of made me realise that like managers are just in the same position, but they get paid more because they have way more responsibilities, and if anything goes wrong, it's on them and it's their head in the line.
And you're expected to do it.
Yeah, but before that, I kind of thought that like, he's not giving me extra money. Like, what the hell? I deserve it. It's just him. It's his issue. But no, it's the person above that said no, and he's tried to do his best to appease me at the same time, while not, getting shit off the person above him. So I kind of I think now that I am kind of moving towards into like learning how like management and stuff like that as well, I have a slightly better understanding now of like the responsibilities that need to be undertaken, and the amount of extra work you have to do on top of doing the same job.
Yeah.
And especially like in Matt's case, like I've had general managers who like they'll come in, they'll sit in the office and they'll spend the entire day there. If I'm on shift with Matt, he's constantly on the bar, unless he's talking to one of the many people he knows anyway on the other side of the bar. So then we're like, Matt, can you come help us please, because we're busy. There's people at the bar, we're a man down because you're chatting shite. But he's always on the bar, and like, but then he's you know, like all the managers, you included as well, like.
Yeah,
you can just sit upstairs if you want to, but you're always in the bar anyway.
Sometimes I do. Like,
no,
sometimes it's needed. Like, you need that little moment to yourself. We do ramble on the show quite a bit, and while we've got you, we're running a little slow. I wanted to ask you a couple more questions before we have to wrap it up. And one of the ones that I thought would be quite nice to get from you as well, with everything that you went through, is if you were to be able to go back and give yourself some advice. Where would you start with that, if you know what I mean? Because I know where I would start, and that would be to, you know, not to dive in head first and try and give everything to this, and it's, you know, to learn it as slow as you can, and then to be adapted and try and make as much as you can without sacrificing that work-life balance. But I really wanted to hear your kind of take on that.
That's a really good question. I think it's a mixture of things, but I think the general umbrella that it's all under is protect yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really important that people protect themselves at work. I think it's two completely different sort of topics, isn't it? Recovery and unionising, but they're actually the same. One's internal, one's external. So for me, if I could go back and meet little me starting out in hospitality, the first thing I tell myself is that I'm more than just my job, and that I'm worth something, because I don't think I realised that. I would certainly have joined a union a lot earlier to save myself a lot of disciplinaries and a lot of upset. But I would have just made sure that, you know, like, people don't often check in with themselves. I think that's important as well. And sometimes you have to really put your foot down and demand a little bit better. I'd say a great piece of advice to anyone in the industry: if you need a day off, you tell them that you need a day off, never ask, because if the option can't be no, don't give them the option to say no. So, you know, like when somebody's got a funeral or something, or a doctor's appointment, just go in and say, I won't be working that day because I have to do this. If you give people the option, they'll
try and make it to be a grey area.
Absolutely.
So you can have the afternoon to yourself and the family, but this evening we're a bit low. We really need to get you coming.
Exactly. And I think so many people sacrifice their mental health for a company's profits. Definitely. Do you know what I mean? And once, like, your health and your mental health in particular is so important. And I think that's just something that people often think they can compromise. And I just think that it's, you know, it's one thing to work in a stressful industry and, you know, to push yourself, that's fine. But so many people push themselves right over the edge in this industry because they get so used to it that they can't determine what's acceptable and what isn't anymore. Yeah. And for me, like, I didn't know where that line was for a very long time. And actually my life completely changed when, first of all, I started being kinder to myself, and I obviously stopped drinking every day. Yeah. And second of all, I understood that I have rights as a worker, regardless of what industry I'm in, and I unionised and tried to make the industry better. Like, it's really helpful to get to know your policies, get to know your rights, all that sort of stuff. It's all on Google. And, you know, the hospitality union is on Google. Everything's on Google. Like, just familiarise yourself with your rights and just check in from time to time. Like, I didn't ever do any sort of self-care for years. Yeah. And now, like, occasionally I'll go, do you know what? I deserve a face mask. Yeah. I'm an all right person. I deserve a face mask. I can have this. But before, I didn't think I was worth a face mask. I didn't think I was worth it joining a union. I didn't think I was worth asking for a bit of extra rest time on a week where my mental health's taken a dip.
Definitely. I think I really agree with that. I think up until this real year, like, I never really sat down and did, like, the, you know, checking my mental health or give myself a day. I never thought it was a thing. I thought, you know, we just kind of all battled through. We run through life as fast as we can.
He's a man.
Yeah.
He's a man.
And again, as a man, like, you know, we just take things on the chin and roll through it. It wasn't until I'm with my partner now that I realised that it's actually quite nice to sit down and just think, or to relax, turn your brain off, without having the reward beer or a whiskey, you know?
Yeah.
So...
And you know what, for anyone who's trying to sort of cut down on any substances as well, just be honest to the people around you, because the right influences are willing to do it for you. You know, when I stopped drinking, a lot of my friends who were still in industry said, well, we can still meet you for a coffee. And the right people will be willing to do that. So if there is anyone out there who's maybe struggling with that whole drinking culture, like, just find some allies and stick with them. Because it isn't easy, is it? What can you do at 1 a.m? Not a lot, but... Yeah. You know.
I think that's another thing that we wanted to set this up for as well, was to kind of almost create our own community where we can all actually, if you're having a shit day, you just put something in a group that would be nice to have one day when we've got a bit of a following. And if, obviously not all of us are going to be free every day, but if other people are in that group feeling the same way, drop a message in there. You might be able to meet someone and then have a coffee with them and talk about things that everyone kind of goes through in our industry.
Absolutely.
So.
I think it's really important to have a sense of community in the industry, isn't it? It's even right down to things like being able to borrow some salt for the glass wash from a neighbouring bar, that sort of thing. It's crucial, especially when we're just so on the outskirts of society. Like, to be able to have a community within the industry, it's absolutely crucial. I love what you're doing with this podcast. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
That definitely is like one of our goals, to kind of create our space, but a space for everyone at the same time, so that, you know, people that
might not be in our industry actually, that we've got having the same kind of days.
Even that as well. And it's like, even for like people who work in places that don't necessarily have that group family kind of mentality within it, that they can probably find some solace and some, you know, community through our kind of podcast and stuff would be ideal as well.
Okay, so right, we are about to run out of time, and Matt would kill me if I didn't ask you this question. And that question is, why do you think we do this? And do you think we can do this forever?
Wow, what a question. Do you know what? I don't know why we do this. I don't actually know.
Shits and giggles.
Yeah, I think it takes a real type of person to withstand the industry for so long.
Yeah.
I think it makes or breaks you, and sometimes it breaks you first and then it makes you.
I think it's addictive.
I think it is. And, you know, if you're inclined to addictive behaviours.
Yeah. There is some sort of adrenaline rush sometimes. Like if you're like 10 deep at the bar, it is kind of fun in a way.
And I mean, it gives you some very questionable coping mechanisms. Some of them, you know, from my personal experience, some of them have really helped me, and others have nearly killed me, quite literally. But I'd say there's aspects of the lifestyle that we can't do forever because we're only human. But I don't know, there's a guy called Brian Simpson who works for the Hospitality Union, and he said that his dream is for us to be able to retire into hospitality comfortably, because the conditions have improved so much. And, you know, I am a realist. I do think we're heading towards a dystopian hell in this industry, but I think once it's dipped, it will start to get better. And I think that ultimately that would be amazing, like within our lifetime, to be able to retire in hospitality, because we've negotiated better terms, and we can sit here, you know, as 60-year-olds and go, yeah, that was a good run. We've done it. Everyone said we'd be out of here by our mid-20s, and we're still here, and we're fine. And we've done a face mask. It's great.
Just on the bar, with your mud bar.
Yeah. It is. Maybe that can be one of the terms we can negotiate.
There you go.
Face masks at work.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time. I did want to say thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I guess good day, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.